Greetings. I had the wonderful experience of doing session with Jen, and I have been back and forth with her in messages since then. And often she's like coming forward and she's like, Natalie, remember this in session? And I'm like, I don't remember the session, not because I don't remember you, like as in you're not a great quality person, but it wasn't me that did it. It was one of my like embodiments. And so there's pieces that I remember, but there's big chunks that you're bringing back. And I thought it would be valuable to have a discussion to do a bit of a debrief around some of the things that took place during the session because they've been they've like been monumentous in our experience together. And I think it could help a lot of people just connect with themselves, connect deeper, and put some pieces together. So I think, yeah, if you don't mind, could you go into a little bit about yourself and a little bit around how we met, and see where we go?
Well, we met on I'll Shift Happily Now. It was back
Mhm.
in February. I didn't know we didn't know each other at that point yet. And I was going through my own ascension, and I had gone through a bit of another version of the dark night of the soul, but nothing as much as I've gone through before. This was very different.
Mhm.
And I was having a really hard time. And after going through, a couple of the meditations with everybody, I knew that I needed to see a couple of you guys. I just didn't know why or anything else. And I started to feel really, really disconnected, like something was missing.
Mm.
And it was really, really deep. And I just couldn't put my finger on it, no matter what work I was doing, what meditations I was doing. And it really started to get emotional where you start having all these impure thoughts. And it's part of
Mhm.
the process of going through the dark night of the soul and things coming up. And I'm so grateful that I have that understanding and have those pieces. But I knew that there was something else that was deeply, deeply missing. And I just felt so lost.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, I got up one day and it was, you got to connect with Natalie. I
Mm.
was like, huh? So I had to hunt you down. So I kind of felt like a stalker for a minute online. That's when I messaged you to actually go through a session. And the funny thing is at that point, I didn't quite really know everything you did. I
Mm.
didn't know some of the pieces and the parts that you actually did. So that was even more interesting for me of taking that leap of faith and going with those whispers that we hear. We're not crazy, that we are hearing, and we're getting that guiding. And it was just like that pull of, you gotta see Natalie. You gotta see Natalie. You gotta reach out to Natalie. And it was kind of like that tapping on the shoulder that kept bugging you, and you're like, what?
Yes, I know.
So I had to hunt you down. So I
Ah,
stopped you a little bit and then
good.
reached out to you to actually get a session, not knowing, having zero clue as to why, what the
Okay.
reason for, what was going to come out of it. It was really taking a leap of faith in God, the universe, and source itself to be able to figure out, you know what, there's something missing and I'm not congruent within myself. And,
Mm.
going through the thoughts of, am I out of integrity? Am I this? You go through all these
Mm.
human aspects, not knowing that there's something a whole lot deeper.
Mhm.
And it was a scary feeling at times. It was an uncomfortable feeling, like a piece of you is missing,
Mm.
but I didn't know what that meant until you came
Mhm.
along.
Well, I am so glad that you found me. Like, it's so beautiful the connection and how you described, the feeling, the nudges, like, hey, you got to see the whisper, right? Like, because I think for many of us that are starting down this path, we do get the little voice and we're like, what is that? I feel like really drawn to this, or I just directly hear it.
Mhm.
And I don't understand why, but I know if I don't, it's not going to stop. Like, so I just need to like have that blind faith and intuitive trust in whomever, whatever this voice is, and know that it's happening for a reason. So like, congratulations to you, ma'am, because you followed that voice right over to me and it was super powerful.
Thank
So
you.
what happened next? So you and I were like communicating, we organized a session,
We
and then what?
organized a session and then we jumped on the session. And almost immediately, there was a couple of things that you had to do that I needed to be realigned first. A
Yes.
couple of pieces in the body and stuff like that. And you automatically knew that I was missing a soul piece.
Mm,
And the minute you said I was missing a soul piece, it was just like, huh, what? That's
mm,
it. That feeling of something in the depths of your soul is missing. Where you have these thoughts like a huge part of you is just not there. And you're so disconnected. And no matter what you do, and no matter what other people say, they're going to try to tell you all these things. And I want people to know that when we say the whispers, it doesn't necessarily have to be a different voice. It could be your own voice that you're
mhm,
hearing. It's a tiny nudge. It's that you got to do this. And I don't believe in coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. It's divine guidance, and you just got to jump with it. You don't need to know the how, you don't need to know the why. It's to remove ourselves from those
mhm,
questions. And also having that trust in you with the guidance of what I'm being told that, I need to hand this over to somebody else, in which I did. And lo and behold, you open that door for
mm,
me. And the minute you gave the soul piece back, it was funny because I remember, for weeks in advance, I kept having this attraction. It was really weird. I had done a retreat with plant medicine. And
mhm,
during my journey, I had this need to be around running water. So
okay.
I didn't think anything of it. There was just this need of this calling to running water. And I didn't understand what that was until we had our session. When you went looking and you found my soul being stuck in Egypt on a beach of all places. So the whole time that I had this pull to water, all of a sudden, my element is fire. And it was just like, huh? But yet it was so calming and soothing that I really just needed to connect with it. And you had explained to me, if you remember, what you had explained to me on what that was I had been trying to call back my soul. And that was the purpose of my connection with the water. To
Mm,
me, I had no idea what this pull, like it was, don't touch my water. Like seriously, I couldn't get out the bathroom. My hand had to be in running water. It was weird. Didn't matter if it was
mm,
kitchen, outside. I just needed to have this running water constantly. And I was trying to get back my peace. And that was the
mhm,
last piece that I wasn't able to get back on my own. So when you
mhm,
brought it back to me, you explained to me, you've been trying to get it. And for some reason, it just didn't come back. So for you, it ended
mhm,
up being really easy. It was like it was
mhm.
waiting for you. I think it was waiting
Really?
for you. Just sitting on the beach waiting.
Yeah. So for me, what was happening was we got started with our session. My typical is to do muscle testing and like balance out different pieces of your body. It's the phase that just passed was all about people's feet and putting energy into their hips and their feet particularly, and removing a lot of sorrow. So I was like aligning everything, and I think when I touched your foot or did something, it just came through me. Like I could just see this beach, and I was like, wait a second, you have this this is where your lost piece of soul is. And you were like, what? And I was like, yeah. And then you, I think, talked about your plant medicine piece, or you
I
talked
told you
about
after,
something.
yeah.
Something happened because I remember being, like, distracted from, like, "Can you just stop so I can go to the beach and get your piece and put it back?" Like, so you had started talking, and I think I must have the embody so I have, Illyrian and an Arcturian embodiment at this point, and I'm one of them. I wasn't present. I was like, "Okay." All I remember is just thinking, like, "Can you just stop talking so I can, like, go get their piece?" And then next thing, you were talking again, thanking me for this piece back, and I don't even remember really the integration part. I just remember something about you guys being back to back,
Yeah.
because I remember looking and being like, "You guys are back to back. Like, are you sure this is how you wanna enter?" And me looking at you and me being like, "Yeah, this is how she wants to this is ho okay, you guys are both agreeing, you're just gonna, like, slide in back to back." And I was like, "Okay." And then it was done. Like, it was super easy. I don't even think I had light language come out of like, It was super easy. I
No,
just
that was
kind
the
of like,
first thing you said. You were like, wait, I didn't even get to use light language. Usually I have to call them in. This is weird.
yeah, yeah, it was super weird. It's like I showed up and they saw me, or whoever the embodiment was, version of me at the beach, and they came over. It's like they hopped in my hand, and then I was thinking like, can you just be quiet? And then all of a sudden you guys were back to back and merged together. And I was like, and it's done. And you were like, "Oh, that's it?" And I was like, that's it. We were both sort of like, that's it. Yep, that's it. Yeah.
And it really was, that was it in a sense, other than some realignment and stuff and adjustments. Outside of that, it was, you know, it was a kind of like this warm, fuzzy feeling.
Yeah, okay.
It was this warm, fuzzy feeling when I felt it coming back together. And then right after this warm, fuzzy feeling was this feeling of wholeness.
Mm,
Because
okay.
I felt, and it's funny because before I booked the session and, tracked you down,
Yes.
I remember I was speaking with my cousin and I was saying to her, I said, I feel fragmented. I didn't know how to put it
Mm,
in words. And I kept using the word fragmented. And,
mm,
she thought it was something else. And, you're going through all these, what it could be. And after that moment, that feeling of being fragmented, like I was whole again.
mhm.
And as the time passed and progressed after our session, it was just more, deeper and just getting into that integration aspect of it.
Mhm. I do find that typically people, so I that is one of my roles that I do in session. It's a normal role for me, is to find soul pieces and fragments and bring them back and call them in and integrate them and work them through. A lot of times individuals just aren't on the same like aligned frequency, and so they just can't come back. I don't, or they don't know where they are, or sometimes the soul is actually trapped in something. So when I have to go into the situation and like look to see why it's trapped, and then untrap it, like release it, I guess, and
Mhm.
then bring it back with me. But like, so when that type of thing happens, the merging and integrating part, people will tell me the next day, like, I had no idea that I like the feeling of wholeness. Like I can't even explain the feeling of wholeness because I didn't know what the feeling of wholeness was.
You never had it
And so
before.
they'll say like, right. Yeah.
Because what, my emotions were very sporadic before that with a lot of things that I was coming out of. And everything was sporadic, good, bad, ugly, and different. It was just,
Mm,
everything was just the emotions ran its own course. And I just allow it to flow. But it was a little bit haywire, I have to
mhm,
say, just a little bit crazy out there. And really getting that wholeness feeling, everything, just the calmness within you, just like completely
mm,
just, it brings you back. And it's a feeling that's really, really hard to explain when you've never felt it before.
mhm.
So it's that before feeling and that after feeling, it's hard to know what it is. But I really, for me, I guess with the path that I've been on, my spiritual path, I just knew something was missing. I couldn't put it into words. And it was really starting to affect me at that point. And I guess that's where the calling and pull came to you, because it
Mm,
was just really feeling like a huge part of me was missing. And it was a very deep, deep sadness. And I remember I had seen somebody and they
oh,
had mentioned it too, that there's this deep sadness that you have. And I couldn't understand it because I wasn't sad. At least I didn't think I
mm,
was sad. I didn't feel sad, until
mhm,
I started going through all these emotions. But even still, I didn't feel that it was, something until I got to realize that is part of the soul missing.
mm,
If you have a deep sorrow and the depth of despair or sadness, it's that piece of you that may be missing.
mhm. And there
And
will
if you want to get it
be,
back, you know where to come to. Just saying.
yeah, for real. Yes, absolutely. So what I discovered about soul transfers, soul pieces, soul going to get all of that stuff was I did my galactic report with Mina. And so she was able to go through each of the things and be able to say, like, hey, wait a second, you have Hydra in there, you have Arcturus in there, you have the Egyptian piece where you were Skepmet before, like all of that, you have the Antares, you all of those are
Mhm.
specifically around soul transfer, soul speaking and counseling with souls, like soul, just soul stuff. And so she was like, this is so you with the healing piece, but also being able to go to the soul, the piece of soul that is stuck, and counsel and move it. And so yeah, I didn't really realize who I was. And I mean, I think we barely touched the tip, right? When we start discovering some of these things, it's just, there's so much to discover, so vast and wide, that we get one little piece of nugget and then you're like, whoa, down a rabbit hole. And it just keeps continuing as we like get on the ascension journey. But I think for me, I used to have like these really like, it wasn't scary, but there's people that work on like the upper dimensions, like the high
Mhm.
frequency, high dimensions. But I would also be called and told to like lower my vibration, like lower, not my vibration, but my frequency, like just
Mhm.
almost like the kids in the Avatar movie. And so they, from like early on in my ascension journey, I could feel it in my brain where I would take a breath in and everything like in my brain would like just, and then I could breathe that through my body. And so then I learned like, oh, this is the brain wave. Like you're shifting those brain waves from the theta delta stuff, and you're bringing it through your body. And I could access like a different vibration. And that's where I could access where people, where all the lost souls are. And I remember like looking at them the first time I saw them, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. And they're like, no, that you are for here. And I was like, oh my goodness, like there's so many of them. And they're like, don't worry about the amount, worry about lifting the ones that are already out. And I was like, I like I've never done this. I don't know what's happening. Like you always, I for me anyway, I always go into like, okay, then I guess you better show me how, right? Because I've never done this. And so
Mhm.
they guided me to a song that was that I found on YouTube, and I discovered there's a light, and I can transmit this light, and those souls that are ready to be lifted, I could lift them. And there was these like beings on horses, black horses, that would come through and like help lift them up and take them, like escort them out. And I was like, pretty sure I'm never supposed to tell anybody about this. Like, this is like, do not enter territory. Like, what is going on? Like, this is where people are like, yeah, she's just bat crazy. Like, don't talk to her. But
Mhm.
it's like, I didn't understand that that is actually part of my role, is escorting souls. And some of them are in places that they don't want to be anymore. They just are stuck or like wherever. And so I don't know what happens after I lift them, the beings take them and off they go. Like I work with so many teams. Um, doing different things, different roles. It's like when I do like implant removals, they'll tell me that there's an implant under someone's arm, and I'll go in and open it and pull out the implant and like pull it out. And I'm like, okay, guys, now what? And they're like, okay, that implant's for, and off it goes, and off new parts come and back into the person. Like I'm just part of a conduit, doing part of a mission, part of like, and there's so many helpers that come in to do and assist. So similar to like what you experienced with having your soul piece back, like they just come in through me, and I get the piece back and it gets put back in you. And then you're like, Natalie, do you remember this? And I was like, not so much remembering that part. What part was that
So
again?
I was like, okay, so who was it? And like, I don't really know. Like,
Oh no.
I'm like, it's not a huge importance because I got it back. That was the most important thing as far as I'm concerned, is getting it back. But it
Yes.
was just that real coming home. And for people to really understand that things don't always happen all at once. So,
Hmm.
since we had our session, it's like the pieces were now coming together. Like I had all the pieces of the puzzle, but it was like you get a puzzle box and it's
Hmm.
all in pieces, and it's all mixed up, and you dump it on the
Hmm.
floor, and now you got to figure out, okay, what goes and what fits in. So it's like I had the pieces and I just didn't know how they
Mhm.
were fit in place. And all of a sudden, getting the soul piece back, things now started to make sense and
Mm.
occurrences ended up happening. And then I was able to be like, oh, that's what she meant, or, oh, that's what that was, that connection. So it was
Yeah.
really great. And in the midst of our meeting, something happened that was
Yes.
completely out of the ordinary that I think shocked us both. I don't
Yes.
remember where we were at. I know you had already given me my soul piece back.
Yes.
You finished working with me, but then
I wasn't finished working with you. I was
you weren't
like
finished
mid
working. I mean,
session.
like just the soul piece was done. That part was done. We
Yes.
had completed that. And then all of a sudden, what you didn't know at the time, my son walked out of his room and came to get a drink. And you were like, you went to say something to me. I can't remember what we were talking about. You went to say something and your whole voice was like, it was so weird. Like you didn't sound like you. You
No.
did not sound like you. And you noticed, you were like, wait, and you're going to say something and you're like, what's going on with my voice now? I'm like, I don't know, but you didn't sound like you. And then all of a sudden my son had gone back in the room and you're like, wait, where did it go? And I didn't know what you were referring to. And you didn't know because you were like, okay, something happened. Something just came in. My voice changed and now it's gone. And then you were like, did something change? So the only thing that could have happened is my son came out of the room.
And I was like, go get him. Go bring him
Yep.
back. Get him.
Yep. Yep. So he came over and you met with him. He's 11. So he's 11 years old. He came in and right away when you looked at him, you were like, wait, he's got all kinds of, I don't know what it is, but I got to take it out.
Yeah.
And it was like the weirdest thing because you did something and you were like, well, like this. And I was like, well, what was that? And you were like, I don't know, but it was like this gunk thing. It's just, we just like, okay. And he spoke to him a bit and then he took off and your voice went back to normal.
Yes.
And he took off and left. And the most interesting thing about this is we didn't know this until actually most recently. So a little bit of the backstory so people have an understanding on the depths and the potential on what can happen, that it's not just spiritual, it can also affect you medically, that you can provide healing in a deeper level than what some people can, in a sense where like I do healing, not the same as you do. And this was
Mhm.
very different because it didn't come to me as the puzzle piece falling into place. It didn't come to me right away. So we met on a Wednesday. The Friday before we met, my son had woken up and he was saying that his throat was starting to get itchy. And
Mm.
usually, it gets sore to swallow. Usually those are the first telltale signs that it's strep throat,
Mhm.
which he's had an issue with since he was like 2, right?
Mm,
As he's
okay.
gotten older, he didn't get as much, as he got older. And they did 2 tests. They did one in the office. It came out negative because he knows when he gets it before the doctors, before anybody can say it. He knows his
Mhm.
body. And it came out negative. So she said, I'm going to give you the prescription anyways. We'll send one to the lab because it'll be more accurate. So when they sent it to the lab, it came out positive for strep throat. What didn't click for me
Mm.
is the Wednesday that we spoke, the doctor called back to give me the results of that
Mhm.
test. Now, we never actually went to go and pick up any medication because there was no symptoms. And usually my son has symptoms. There was 0 symptoms. There was 0 anything at all whatsoever, as if there was nothing. Nothing clicked into me until afterwards, which was the gunk that you took
Mm.
out was
Yeah.
actually the gunk from the strep throat.
Mhm.
We never had to go and get the antibiotics. We never had to
Ah.
go through the process. Nothing resurfaced, no symptoms, 0 nada. And it was only 2 weeks later that it clicked as to what that gunk was and what had happened, because
Mm.
I didn't even think about it. It wasn't even a thought process. And I knew I needed to contact you right away to let you know, I know what the gunk was. Like, hey, I know what the gunk was.
Yeah. So cool.
It really,
Yeah.
really was. It really was.
Such a powerful experience from my perspective. What was happening was you and I were chatting, doing something like talking about something that was happening in the session. And then all of a sudden, like my voice just was like, "Ah," or just really croaky all of a sudden. And I was like, what is going on? And that will happen to me sometimes if I'm working on an individual and we're already connected and we're like in session, we're doing it. And I get to a place where I have to clear something before I can integrate a soul piece. I'll be like, oh, okay, you have, my throat will get croaky and my voice will come out croaky. And I'll be like, okay, right now I have to clear your throat chakra to allow this integration to happen. Um, so it was weird because your integration had already happened. And I'm already talking to you, and then mid-sentence, all of a sudden, croaky happens, and I'm like, "What is going on? Why all of a sudden is your throat chakra come up? Like, I haven't even touched you. So, like, what is going on?" You went from balanced and aligned to, like, throat chakra needs to be cleared, and then I was like, "Oh, it's not you. Like, what changed? What happened in the room?" And you're like, "I don't know. My son just went past." I'm like, "Yeah, go get that guy." And that's when he came back. I was like, "Yep, croaky's back." And then I think I was there a little bit of light language? I almost wonder if there was a little bit.
You didn't speak it. You might have used your hands for the light language, but I don't recall you speaking.
Okay. Yep.
I think it was your hands.
Sometimes it does sometimes it does come into my head, but not out of my mouth, but I can hear it and I'll do my movements.
You might have.
And then
I'd have to verify the recording, to be honest with you. You might have.
uh, okay.
I'm not,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
remember.
remember.
Now
I
it's
don't
my turn for the
remember it
not
either.
remembering.
Yeah. Well, and then he's sitting there, and I remembered letting him know, like, you need to be able to express yourself, freely express yourself. Like, and there was some peer interaction stuff that was happening, which I didn't know about, which I was just telling him, like, when two sets of peers are pulling you in different directions and trying to be like, well, he agrees with us. Like, don't allow that to happen. Just like, you know what? I'm my own person. I'm gonna do my own things. Like, leave me out of it. You guys need to like just keep me out of it. And then what else? That's when I was like, wait, there's all this like stuff in his throat. Like it looked like um when you have plumbing and you take the pipes apart and there's like this sludge that can kind of get into there. And I was like, the walls are like so sticky and like thick, and there's like, what is all this stuff? I remember being like, what is all this stuff? Like as if you could see it and know what it was. And I'm like, what's yeah, taking it all out. And I'm like, okay, it's
I
clear.
was like, I don't
Good.
know, just get rid of it, please.
Yeah, it's clear and good. And your son was delightful and like he was brilliant. And I think it was after that you said like he's twice gifted, or you explained some things about him anyway,
Gifted and twice
that kind
exceptional.
of like jogged. There you go. And that's when I was like, that means he's hybrid. That means he's a hybrid soul. And I'm like, you need to go Mina's way because she also is a hybrid soul. And so yeah, it was really cool to know like you're raising a hybrid kid. And you're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, yeah, like what does that
Like I
mean?
knew I was a star seed, but now you're bringing in the hybrid piece, and it was just, oh, what's that now?
Yeah. It's so
What does that
cool.
look like?
Yeah. And like they're very um it's almost the same as when we intuitively know to do something. They're born knowing more than what we would typically see in a kid. So you have like what looks like these wise souls or like old souls coming through, and they can sometimes look a little bit defiant because you're like, well, actually we're going to do this, and they're like, I can't do that, no, I'm not doing that. And you're like, why are you being so
And there is
like
nothing you
opposition?
could do or say that will change their mind when they say no. So I'm letting you know,
Yeah,
don't think that you can overpower that no. It's never
no,
going to happen. Like it
that's
is
right.
solidified in cement. Not
Yep.
happening.
Nope, it's no.
Yeah.
I have four of my own. Three of them are definitely, when they say it's not happening, they're all on the spectrum. And so when they're like, no, and they say it so like matter of fact, like, no. And you're like, oh no, we need to, no, no, no. Like you just know once they say no, it's just, and it's not from poor parenting. It's not from lack of guidance. It's not, it's just, you know that it is coming from inside that they're just not having it.
And it's
Um,
not one of those no's just because you told them to go put something in the garbage or go brush their
no,
teeth or like any of those things, you know, it's really, you know, it's something more about them having to do something or say something or whatever that may be, that's where those no's really come in. And also for them, it can be extremely challenging. There's a lot of pull when it comes to a lot of adult school teachers.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah. Because he calls
absolutely.
them out
Because
on their BS.
yeah, that's I think he said
It's like,
almost exactly.
yeah, he calls them out on their BS at the end of the day. When they're wrong, he'll tell you you're wrong and he'll explain to you why you're wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the added thing. And a lot of people can be taken back, as an adult, having a child, especially so young, kind of correcting you, course correcting you. And instead
Mhm.
of stepping back and appreciating that moment, because we have this notion that just because we're adults that we can't learn from younger people,
Mhm.
that we can't learn from our kids, or we can't learn from, younger siblings, or, that age group. And it's really not true. There's so much that we can learn from all age groups, old, young, it doesn't matter. Those are pieces that can really bring us together and give us more of that wholeness.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think yeah, our kids that are hybrids struggle in a school system. They struggle with different members in our extended family that are like, oh, just tell them how to do it. Just tell them what's the deal is, and like make them do it. And you're like, no, our parenting has come a long way since the just do it because they said so. Like it really, our parenting to raise seed kids is shifting to allowing them to have the autonomy and the space to expand, and the voice to be able to do it. So it's so cool to see some of those aspects coming forward. And like your son, when he was for the session, for that brief time, he was like, I just tell them, I don't put up with it, and I just tell them. And I'm not like it, people, it's not that I want people to like me more or less. Like he's not out to be like, well, I hope I win brownie points and they like me. Like he had this ability to move aside that stuff, because I think a lot of times our conditioning and programming is like, be good so they like you. Don't say that, they won't like you. Like, we don't teach our kids that anymore. We teach them like, no, if you see something that's not okay, you need to say something.
Or conform who you are to be liked.
Yeah.
And that's not what life is about. It's not about
No.
any one of us conforming. It's really about embracing our uniqueness and celebrating each individual's uniqueness, because we all are special. It's not just our parents
Hmm.
that told us that. We are all special. Every single person is special in their own way. And I
Yes.
think that really needs to be celebrated more, especially with
Yeah.
these little ones. And I
Hmm.
can attest to, it's very different. I'm a grandma now, and I have two older
Oh,
children.
okay.
Yes, 30 and 29. So, and grandchildren, 3 and almost 1. And I gotta say, it's very different. Yes, I was young when I had my first two, but the parenting, and even, we evolve as humans no matter what
Hmm.
age we get. We're always evolving, we're always growing. So it's very different on parenting from then to even parenting now.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Not just that the kids are different, obviously, but
Right.
times are very, very different as well.
Yep, absolutely. And I think gone are the days like my mom at this point is like, and my husband's mom too. She's like, I raised 7 kids, so I get it. And you're like, you raised 7 kids 30 years ago. Like, and while that was definitely struggles of a different type, they were of a different type. We're looking at so many different aspects now than what other individuals had, especially when it comes to community. Our sense of community is so different now than it was 30 years ago. When you raised kids 30 years ago, you had other people in the community around, you had a extended family around, and now it's so fast paced and it's so like individualized, that it's not necessarily a community unless we create one. And I think that that's a new piece that's coming, is creating our own communities and our own support systems. And that's
Yeah.
allowing for some strong growth and things.
so
Mhm.
that we can have those communities, those groups of people that we vibrate more with. We can
Mhm.
find who our people are in a sense. And when I say our people, is just who you're vibrating with based on your topics or conversations, you know, people that are aligned with wherever you're at.
Definitely.
It's
Definitely.
something that's important, you know, and going through this journey with you, you know, has been a saving grace on so many aspects, because
Mm.
when you have that piece that's missing, you really question yourself. And it's not even you know, I'd use the word doubt, but it I don't know if that's the best word that fits. It's what's coming to me right now, because you start
Mhm.
questioning your own sanity. You start
Mhm.
questioning your identity. You start questioning all these different aspects. And, you know, when you don't know what you don't know. And if it wasn't
Mhm.
for the guidance pointing me to you, I would have never been able to put my finger on what that piece was missing. If it didn't
Mhm.
come to me, if I wasn't guided to you, I wouldn't have known at all whatsoever. I would have been trying everything underneath the sun, and nothing was working.
Mhm.
You know,
I
and God
agree.
forbid, you know, you talk to people, or you tell the wrong person, or, you know, if I went to the doctors, what would happen? I would be labeled.
Mm.
You know, you're labeled with, you know, mental health issues or stuff like that, when at the end of the day, it's part of your ascension process. It's part of your journey. It's part of your spiritual journey. And
Mhm.
you know, you don't, like I said, you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, most of the other people don't know, because they're not on that path. So I encourage
Mm.
anybody that if you're having those, you know, feelings or inadequacies of that, look into the spiritual community first and foremost, versus going to the doctors, because what are they going to do? Write you a prescription for
Mhm.
medication that you probably 9 times out of 10 don't need,
Mhm.
you
I
know?
do find Yeah, sorry. I do find that so I have a therapy practice and I also have a spiritual practice, and there is a lot of crossover between. So a lot of star seeds find me on the therapy side, and they will tell me like the symptoms that they're going through. And I'm like, you have a lost piece of soul, like a fragment. You just need a piece back. Or you just need an alignment, or like there's something that I can do, but they also need some of that, like their nervous system, some of the feelings need to be identified and pulled out, to help ground that nervous system and settle it, and align and attune and stay, and keep it. So there's such a huge crossover, and it definitely intersects. I've had clients that are on therapy side that are like, I don't need my meds and I don't know why. I'm just happy and I don't know why. Like it's so strange because I don't go in saying, well, you're a star seed. Like it's therapy. So it's not like you get to talk
Start
about,
scaring people.
yeah, you don't get to talk about beings with black horses and lifting souls. Like you just don't. And it's not a recognized practice. Yes.
I'm going to the quack, but the quack is quacked. Is that
Yes,
it?
yeah, yeah, and I'm licensed, so it's regulated by a college of, like, physicians, right? So, yeah, there's certain things we are just not allowed to talk about, and
No, I get
so
it,
it
because
is.
it runs. It's funny you brought up, what was it you just brought up? Oh geez, you said something before that. You brought up something, and it left me.
Hmm,
It'll come back.
okay. Yeah, I think, like, the medication when people come off it and they don't understand why, or I always do a consult to first to make sure that I'm gonna be a good fit for the individual. And during that consult, they'll be like, "There's something about your voice. Your voice has something about it that makes me like know that you're the right person." And I'm like, "That's because you're a starseed." Like, it just is. The resonance is so deep and it speaks to their soul, even though I'm talking about like, okay, so you have depression and this was what happened in your life. And they're telling me different things about their mental health. But that resonance is so deep.
It is. I remember. So you made the comment, and you just
Good.
triggered something else that I didn't mention, that I think that is important for people to know too. Everybody will have a different reaction and a different experience at the end of the day. But one
Hmm.
thing you mentioned is your nervous system. You know, I
Mhm.
talked about the emotions being all over the place. One thing about the nervous system that I was experiencing, and I couldn't understand it for the life of me, is when I would wake up from sleeping, this was going on for a couple of weeks. I would wake up and my body would be so hot that you could see the
Mm.
mirage of the steam coming off my body. My shirt would
Mhm.
be soaking wet. It was like night sweats. You go to the
Mm.
doctor, what are they going to say? Do you know there's 100 different things underneath the sun that creates, you know, night sweats? So now they want to go and send you for all these different tests and all these things, you know, out of the out of the blue. But these were the pieces that were going on, and I couldn't understand it because it wasn't like a regular night sweat. You know, yeah, you
Mm.
sweat at night, but this was, my body was overheating. Like it was overheating
Mm.
where you could see it, you could feel it. Like the
Hmm.
heat that was just coming off was crazy. My palms would be clammy, the bottom of my feet would be hot. It was just like all these weird sensations would be going on, and you really don't know what's what. And those were
Mhm.
all pieces of not having that soul piece. And I guess trying to get it back and not getting it back, my body was, that nervous system was now kicking in. And everything was
Mhm.
just out of whack because I remember you had to realign me. You're like, what is going on here?
Yes, I did. I did have to overline you. Yeah, it's like your body was in overdrive. Like it was like hunting, searching, like revved really high. Um,
Every night. It wasn't just every other, it was every night. And it was getting worse and worse. Like it was
oh,
just crazy. Yeah. And the funny thing is there were times where I was freezing in my body, but yet my
mhm.
body was just like the steam. It was weird.
Mm.
You know, I never said,
So
oh, don't worry about it, you're going through perimenopause. Or I'm like, yeah, you know, really, I don't want to hear that right now because one has nothing to do with the other. This is not part of that at all. This is like beyond
right.
night sweats.
Yes.
And I wouldn't remember anything. So it's not to say I was dreaming about something or I didn't remember anything. I had a great sleep. It didn't disrupt my sleep. I just woke up like, what is going on? So
Crazy.
it was
So
crazy. It was. So I thank you so much
uh,
for giving me back my missing piece.
so do you not get the night sweats anymore? Did that settle down, the nervous
Within,
system?
so the night, because we met late, it was at night when we met. That
Mm.
night, it wasn't that bad. I had a little bit, but it wasn't anything over the top.
Mm,
And
good.
then the night after that, so 24, I'd say 24 hours after, no,
Oh, yay.
it stopped. It stopped. So now it started back a little bit here and there, but that's for other things. It
Mm.
has nothing to do, and it's mild. It's not anything, you know, that you can call it
Oh, okay.
perimenopause if you wanna. Just say it. But it is nothing. Whatever was going on, whatever was happening, getting back that soul piece, it stopped all of it. It
Mm.
really did. Stopped in its tracks because I haven't had those. Not like that.
Mhm.
Not like what I was experiencing at all whatsoever.
That's crazy.
Completely gone. Yeah. And my son is completely fixed.
Yay.
Yeah.
That
Well,
was
he's not sick, didn't
so
have to do anything. So worked on both sides.
that was amazing that like he felt the strep coming. You took him to the doctor. Eventually it was confirmed, yes, you need to get meds. He actually has the strep. With the test has come back, go pick up the meds. By that point, you're like, he doesn't have any symptoms anymore because the lab took so long to get the results in. Like you're like, I've already met with Natalie, coincidentally, because you didn't book him in for a healing session. He
No,
just happened to
no.
invite himself into one, which
And
was
we didn't even
perfect.
know what it was, so I didn't connect those dots, those pieces until after. And it was the day that the doctor had called me saying, yeah, you should go and get the antibiotics. It came out positive, and it was like, so I went to my son, and now, like I said, he's used to it, so he knows the signs right up front, and it goes right away. Within 24 hours, his throat's swollen, he can't swallow, his
Mm,
glands are swollen, like fever, like it's just the whole nine, immediate. He gets it quick, fast, and it's done. Like it comes in and then it goes out. And this time around, there was nothing. And we were
mm,
kind of like, I checked his glands, and his glands were a little bit swollen when I had taken him to the doctors. The swelling was gone. There was no nothing, zero,
mm.
nada. And it was just like, we never bothered. And it was
Mhm.
just what, today or something that, excuse me, it clicked. And I was like, oh my God, that's what that was. Like it just
Yes,
didn't. So things will come and make sense maybe later on.
after.
Cause you and I didn't know. We were just like, okay, it was gunk. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, it's gone. And I knew that I needed to let you know what that was when it clicked in my head as to, I know what that was.
Yes. So how fast did it disappear, his symptoms?
He never really had it long enough to get symptoms. He
Okay,
just had the
good.
symptom when I brought him to the doctor, and it didn't continue. It didn't go on. So we never bothered with it. I had the session with you, and she called again and she's like, go and get it. And that was that. Just didn't
Okay.
bother.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
I love that
And I know a
part
lot of
of
people will have an issue with some of that just because of the classification of strep nowadays.
mm,
But
yes.
there isn't anything at all. Like it's completely gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's like a long-term thing as well. Like because when you're prone to certain things, when your body's prone to certain things, they pop up. But hopefully that will, if it happens again, we'll know just to energetically get in and move some of the stuff to help his body fight whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly versus having to take the antibiotics because now he doesn't have it. So what's the
Hmm.
point in going and taking it? And it's funny because now they're like, well, maybe it was a false positive.
A false
Now
positive.
you're
Okay.
questioning. It was negative, then it was positive, and now it's negative. So what? What I'm going to tell them? Oh yeah, I went to see Natalie, and she did some light language and took out the gunk. And we're good. Like I can't exactly explain that. They were like, well, this is weird because you don't have it and then not have it, as far as the medical, aspect
Right.
goes. And what am I supposed to explain? So they chalked it up to a false positive.
Huh. Well, that's so crazy. And I do notice that some of that stuff happens with my kids as well. I recorded a video way back where my son went to bed limping and told me his leg hurt. And I was like, it's a growing pains. Like you're 7. You probably jumped too much on a trampoline somewhere or something. Just go to bed, rest, and wake up. We'll see how it is. He woke up the next day and he was like, my leg still hurts. He was limping. He can't put like weight on it. And I was like, oh gosh. Um, so I had learned that I should go in and do some work on him because the last time it happened was a couple of years back and he had been complaining. I took him to emerge because I'm like, a kid can't even put weight on it. Like he went in on a wheelchair. Like he was like so hurt and he couldn't walk. And so they x-rayed it and they wheeled him away from me when they x-rayed it and they brought him back walking. And I was like, what did the x-ray tech do? And I was like, that's weird. An x-ray tech like um pulls up the film and he's like, there's nothing wrong with his leg. And my kid looks at me and he's like, what did that man do to me to make my leg better? And I'm like, oh, that's a really good question. Like, you for 2 days you've limped around and then they put you in an x-ray machine and boom, you're like come out fixed. Like, what the hell was that? And so that's when I checked in and I was like, this isn't even his. This is energetic stuff that's happening on like a 5D level that's impacting him. I'm like, all right. So the next time any of my kids get sick, any of them have pains, the first thing I ask is this a 3D thing or is this a 5D thing? And where do I address it? Do I address it in the 5D or do I actually have to take them in the 3D and get them like looked at? And most of the time it's a 5D thing and I can get in there. So I did a video of him waking up the next day. He's like, I still can't walk good. So I'm like, you just go sit over there. So he's playing his like little Nintendo Switch thing that he's playing, and I'm working away at it. And I don't even, when I do that kind of work, I don't remember it. And so all I remember is being like, okay, you're done. And he stands up and the look on his face when he starts walking, he's like, my leg doesn't hurt, my leg doesn't hurt. And I'm like, of course it doesn't hurt. Like it was never your pain and it was never yours to begin with. Like it was some energetic thing that was happening. And he obviously doesn't understand that. He's like, okay, well, it's good. And my leg's fixed. And he walks off normal. And you can see the time lapse is like 10 minutes in between where I did the work and then he's walking normal. And it's like the stuff that we're experiencing that we're is manifesting in our bodies is either stuff that's stuck and been in our nervous system and has come through our lineage or has been something that we experienced in a past life. And it all comes forward to help us clear, to help us have enough space and capacity to pull in another piece back. And so the more shadow work and the more density we can lift, the more aligned we can be, and the more
Yeah.
pieces we can integrate. It's just a cycle. And so I help in all of those areas, right from like people saying, I have this feeling and this feeling. And I'm like, come here. Which of these feelings are actually yours? Okay, two of them. All right, we're going to pull the two of them out. Okay, this third one belongs to your mom's, grandma's, sister's husband. Okay, so we're going to figure out why that's there. We go into the past life where that happened. Okay, it's you were his, I don't know, child at that time. There was some interaction that didn't feel good for you. You developed this feeling that was passed through and passed down. Okay, can I resolve this? Is this resolved? Do you agree? Do you agree? And I like pull up the two people in that lifetime and ask them if they agree. And they're like, we agree. This is fine. We love each other now. Okay, perfect. So the conflict's resolved. So I call myself a galactic mediator because I travel to wherever the realms are where these things happen and they occurred. And then I pull them up and I'm like, really, this isn't really a big a problem. Do you want to carry it for the next like 1,000 years together? Like, probably not. Let's just resolve it. And then we resolve it. And it's sometimes such silly stuff, like what I would determine such silly stuff, because I know how it's going to manifest later, right? But time isn't really a thing. So you can just go in wherever and drop in and be like, okay, so what's the deal? You missed a plane and you think you're responsible, or you missed a like boat and you think you're responsible. Like, why didn't you get to the boat? Well, I couldn't get there. Do you know she couldn't get there? No, I had no idea. Okay, so are you mad at her? Well, I was. Okay, do you understand why she was late? Yeah, I do. Okay, so like, do we have perspective from each other's side now? Yeah. So we this is good. This is good. Okay. So and then it just pulls it right out of the entire lineage. Like anger gone. And you're like, wow, that's like crazy. You had like all these like right down the chute of all these individuals that had this anger programming through their whole system, and their responses were like hair triggers, and you're like, this is because of somebody missing a boat? Like crazy.
And non-communication.
Yeah.
That's what comes up for me right now, is that's a piece of communication. We're so much more further, but there's still that brokenness between our communication, that we take things personally, whether somebody says something or does something, without taking the step and finding out what happened, why. you know
Mhm.
with what you just explained, one person couldn't make it or didn't make it or missed it, and the other person didn't know, so they each didn't know what was really going on, so they assumed the worst, and it was
Mhm.
left for how long. And that's something that even
Yeah.
happens till today. So it's a good piece to know that don't always assume. Take that step, that further step into communication, and find out what happened or why, and don't always internalize it, because it's not
Yeah.
always about you.
That's true.
Sorry to say, it's not always about you.
Yeah.
I know
It's
people don't like when I say that, but
it's
it's
not.
true.
And I always say the mantra is seek to understand. If you're in a disagreement with somebody, seek to understand. It's like, what am I missing here? What happened that are the missing pieces? And like it's amazing. So I used to, before I went on my ascension journey, I worked a 9 to 5 job. And in my 9 to 5 job, it was very toxic, like toxic workplace. It was regular toxic workplace. And so I would always go to bed at night being like, wow, is this person upset? Is that why they did that stuff? Did I upset them? Or maybe I said this, and I know that's one of their triggers. So maybe they think I willingly or walked into purposely pushing their buttons. Like, is that why she like turned and walked away and didn't say anything? So I would always have this like mind racing thing happening. And then eventually one day I was like, you know what? I am become like I'm making myself a victim here. Like I can't sleep at night. I'm sure they are all sleeping. So I am my worst enemy at this point because they are living their best lives and they don't know about me doing this over here. This is anxiety creeping in. Like, what am I doing? And so that's when I just said, you know what? From this point on, I'm just going to ask because I'm not going to drive myself crazy at night wondering, did I upset her? Is that why she did this? Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Like, no. So anytime somebody like turned and walked away abruptly, or like I walked into a conversation and they all stopped and they all disappeared, I was like, what the heck? I just would go ask. I would be like, hey, you know what? Earlier in the break room, I walked in and sat down and like everybody scattered and stopped talking. What was the deal? They're like, you didn't hear the alarm? And I was like, what alarm? They're like, we all had to leave the break room. I'm like, I was just getting in there. I thought there was something going on with me. And they're like, no. And so once I sought clarity around things, I only ever one time had somebody say to me, yeah, it was you. I just didn't like you. And I was like, okay, fair enough. Like, not everybody's going to like me. Okay, that's cool.
That's okay.
Um,
You don't have to
and
like me, but I'll tell you something, you can learn a whole lot from me,
yes,
right?
it's
We don't
true.
have to, even if you come across somebody, you don't have to like them. You don't have to agree with them on everything, but there's always something that you can learn from somebody. So
Absolutely.
don't turn yourself off and shut yourself down from learning just because your ego or your emotions are, well, I don't really like this person. Because half the
Mm,
time you don't even really know why you don't like them,
nope.
whether
Yep.
it's their personality, their character, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times that is bringing up a shadow piece for a reason, right? Like there's a good reason that when we first start our shadow journey and digging into some of that stuff, into that shadow work, it is reflecting on your day and being like, wow, I had strong feelings about that. Like, why is that strong feeling coming to the surface? And I would say we can't control outward. What we have control over is our inward pieces. The pieces that we have power over are our own pieces. And we bring, I remember there was a workplace trauma that happened, and I went into therapy, and they did what was called EMDR at that time. And that was like my opening to like some of the deeper stuff, the nervous system stuff.
Mhm.
And I remember being like, wow, like that was when I really consciously realized we can shape our reality. We are in charge of shaping our reality. Like, what is going on? So, for those that don't know about EMDR is where they take a memory that you have experienced, and it's a traumatic memory, and they measure it on like how traumatic this feeling is. They rate it, and then they put buzzers that simultaneously, like they go back and forth intermittently. There we go back and forth, and they buzz, and you're like, okay, but it's telling your brain, the left side and the right side, that it needs to communicate with each other. And the only time that happens typically is during the REM sleep. And so you take this memory and you have the memory actually create when you had this memory, when you were experiencing it, you had a belief that you developed from it. And so, based on this memory and based on the belief you developed, do you want to keep that belief or do you want to have a new one? And since it's triggersome and doesn't make you feel good, most people say they want a new one. So, you're like, okay, you go through a little booklet and you look to see what memory you would actually want to have from this, or what belief you would actually want to have from this memory. So you suddenly are like, I actually want to feel empowered and I want to feel like I have control in this situation and I want to feel like I'm important and I'm validated and I'm like, seen. And so you're like, yeah, that's what I want from my memory. It's so as you like hold this memory, the experience that you had, and you're like in it, you like are going back to it and are living it and in it, and it's emotional and it sucks. And you're like, hey, these jerks, and this is what happened. And you have this old belief, but instead of like repeating that old belief, you repeat the new belief. I'm empowered and I like am in control and I'm seen and I'm heard and I'm validated. And all of a sudden, this image starts to change. And you're like, the administrator will start to ask you, like, how is the image changing and how are you feeling? She takes these breaks and the image. What I was noticing was often the people would get really small, or like the floor would open up and swallow them, and they'd be like not there. And I'd be like having a party, and I'm like, I'm empowered, I'm awesome. And I'm like, wow, like I now can have these experiences, like these memories that pop up, and I'm like, they don't phase me. And the people that are involved in those memories that used to trigger me don't trigger me because I'm like, that they shrank and went away and they didn't have power over me anymore. And so it's like you create your own reality. So that was the like beginning of my shadow work, started in therapy. And so it's so cool where that overlap is there,
Yeah.
but definitely those those that dense stuff that we believe we're victims of something, or we have anxiety around being in certain places and we don't know why. That is the starting point, the manifestation point, the thing that wants to like knock, knock, knock. Oh, and see Natalie, get this stuff resolved. It's living in your nervous system. It doesn't need to.
But it's also good that you see the moment where you were in the cafeteria at work.
Hmm.
If you didn't ask somebody if it was about you, I
Hmm.
just want to play devil's advocate for a second. So
Yeah.
people actually can relate to it depending on what side of the spectrum that they're on or what perspective they're looking through.
Mm.
And if you didn't ask the question on was it even about you? You didn't hear the alarm, so you had no
Mm.
idea. You would have then turned around and what? What would have actually happened if you didn't question if it was
My
about you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the old me would have, in that situation, sat down at the table by myself, probably like gone into a doom and gloom mode, like, oh, everybody doesn't like me. They're all talking about me. They don't want to include me. This is, and it would go into this old pattern, probably like a narrative that I had, like that I make it fit that narrative, right? And so I would have been like, why does this happen to me all the time? I am a victim. I am a victim. I am a victim. And when I would go to sleep at night, it probably would have gone to that place of, um, I don't like them. They're so mean and horrible to me. I don't like them. I don't like working here. These people are just continually, ongoingly rude. Like they just don't even notice how rude they are. Uh,
So it had definitely changed your relationship as well as your perspective, and you would have
Absolutely.
internalized everything. So it's
Hmm.
always that taking that next step again back with the communication is to, if something like that happens, it was good for you to step up, the newer version of you, and be like, hey, was that about me? Like, well, what's going on here? You didn't even
Hmm.
hear the alarm. So God forbid you had to
No.
run. You wouldn't be running. You'd be like, everybody's running without me.
Yep. No clue what was going on. Completely clueless, like what was happening. Yeah, and it is like so important to ask like what is going on? What is happening? Why is this happening? And to look at one of the things when I was in therapy, what they had said, like we want to like douse, like put this out. We don't want your nervous system sending out those messages. And we don't want other people's nervous systems hitting you and yours picking up messages that aren't accurate. And so they were looking at it like, what part do you bring to this? And I remember being in this session and being like, I'm coming here to talk to you about being traumatized by my workplace. And you're telling me I bring something to it. Like, like I did something. I'm the damn victim. Like, what do you mean I did something? I remember like that was a distinct piece where I was like, I think I'm done. Like it was session number one, and I'm like, I think I'm done. It was so funny.
It's funny because depending on what generation you're in, the
Yeah.
one thing that I notice and I see it's actually it's becoming a pet peeve because I'm seeing it more in the schools and I see it with the teachers and I see it with some of the parents is not teaching kids because it becomes now when you get older as an adult is not taking responsibility for yourself
Mm-hmm.
because we're responsible for what we say, what we don't say, what we don't do. We're responsible for all aspects. Even if we don't know certain things, we're still responsible because just because you didn't know doesn't mean you couldn't have found out or you couldn't have asked a question,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's
That's
always
right.
those perspectives. So, our first initial, especially, even for me, I agree with you. My old self would have been like, what are you talking about? What do you mean it's my fault? How is it my fault?
Right.
Because I'm not taking responsibility. That's what it comes down to. And I see it so much, even with some of the parents where they're pointing fingers with, I don't want you playing with that kid because that kid is distracting you in class. No,
Mm.
nobody's distracting you in class. It's you distracting yourself. So now instead of teaching your child to take responsibility for themselves, right, and not follow others, they're pointing the finger, oh, you can't play with this one and you can't this, which
Mm.
also gives them that scapegoat. And then what happens when you get older, you know? And I find depending on your generation, it's really, really challenging when you start to step into that and be like, now you got to start taking responsibility for everything. And you got to go back in the
Mm-hmm.
past. You got
Mm-hmm.
to go back there and you got to
Yeah.
dredge up all that gunk is going to come out for you to actually see it and now question and look at what could you have done differently? How,
Mhm.
how could you have done it differently? What could have you have done different? What could you have done better? And not do it in a criticizing way and not being judgmental towards yourself because you don't know what you don't know, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
now you do, you know?
Yeah. It's having compassion for yourself and allowing that space so that you can bring up the stuff and evaluate it. I also remember when my sister, she was in a relationship and she was like, I don't know. I tell him all the things that I like, and he doesn't do the things I like. So I'm never happy because he doesn't do the things I like. And I'm like, you're never happy because you choose not to be happy. And she's like, no, if he does the things I like, then he would make me happy. I'm like, why is it his responsibility to make you happy? She's like, because he's my boyfriend. And I'm like, so he signed up to make you happy? She's like, he's supposed to. And I'm like, but what if everybody made themselves happy and then they got in a relationship and their happiness came from within? And because they're so happy, they want to spend time together and that just intensifies things. And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the happy comes from you. You
The
don't get to
choice.
yeah, it doesn't grow outside and anywhere else. Like, doesn't that mean then the opposite is true? Like, if you have a bad day, then that means everybody else is responsible for making you feel crummy. Like, no, you get to own your own power. You get to be able to be sovereign in all of this. You get to be able to cultivate your own happiness and create your own feelings." And she was like, "What? What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah, I had a
these
hard
people,
time with that too.
he does things on purpose to make me mad." And I'm like, "You choose to be mad." She's like, "No." Like, okay, this it is really difficult when you first get that concept or like notice that concept. It
Yeah,
is
trying to
really
wrap your head
difficult.
around it really is because, you know, that's one of my mottos is happiness is a choice. You wake up in the morning and you have to choose to be happy. And you may have to
Mhm.
choose that 1,000 times in a day,
Yep.
but that's okay. Just continue to choose it.
Yep.
It's
Absolutely.
that ongoing thing. We fall off. There's nothing wrong. We are having a human experience. So we're all going to trip. We're going to fall. It's okay. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and choose again.
Yep.
You get
Totally.
rerouted with somebody else's energy and you're like, oh, what was that? Okay, let me get back to me. Let me choose to be happy
Yep.
again.
Absolutely. So I am just so thankful that we were able to like get in and do a debrief together and talk about things that I didn't remember or parts of it I remembered, and how it felt for you, as well as like what I was experiencing on my end.
Yeah.
Um, so
Getting
so
two sides
thankful.
of the coin, and also, having people to look at that there could be, things that are bigger than us, that
Hmm.
are just there are some things that you just can't explain. And when you have those nudges, that intuition is kicking in, trust it.
Yes.
Trust it,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
go looking. Don't think it's a one cookie cutter kind of thing. Look into things that are deeper. There were certain aspects, that I'll go into at another time that also brought a lot of clarity for me, which has to do with history and family and stuff on why
Mm,
things happened the way they happened and why I went through certain experiences was to teach me about it, right?
mhm.
So it's really not judging yourself, keeping yourself open and really looking at what's coming up. Where is it coming from? And you may not always have the answers right away, and that's okay too. Just be
Mhm.
open to it.
Yeah, for sure. And you're going to join on the weekly or bi-weekly Zooms,
Yep.
and continue to expand and help us and help others. Because I think a big piece of what we learned too was, once you got your soul piece back, you were like, I know what my mission is. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to help other women. I'm supposed to do help with feminine energy. Like I know what I'm supposed to do. So
I've
that
been
was
coaching since 2014, 2015, something like that. So I've been doing coaching, women's empowerment, really, that aspect of it. And what came up was to even go deeper onto a different level and open up, that spiritual side, because to be
mm,
honest, I never really put it out there. It was an added bonus that people got when they worked with me. It was those
mm,
things behind the scenes that, I can drop in and I can help them with, and just didn't look at it on that side. And then after getting that soul piece, it was like, pieces were coming, but I just didn't understand them. And then all of a sudden it was like, I get it. I got to bring back those ancient women's circles. So that'll be coming in the next
Mm,
couple of weeks.
that is so
What I'll be
exciting.
doing, and doing online. I'd like to do in person as well. It's just location and stuff like that. So it's what's to come. Absolutely.
Ah, so exciting.
It
So
is. It is. Because you
happy.
never know what direction we're going in. So you just
No.
go.
Yeah, exactly. You just board the plane and see where it takes you. Uh,
I did that once. I did.
oh, I have no doubt. It's
It was
been
that beach
delightful.
again.
So fun.
But I do appreciate it. Thank you so, so much. The amount of gratitude I can't even put into words,
Mm,
because that displacement feeling, it's not a good feeling.
mm-mm.
It's not a good feeling. And you don't really even understand what it is when you're feeling it. So just know that there is a feeling of wholesomeness. And, when we get clear, or maybe we can get to put it into more better words, in a sense, it's hard to put into words. There's nothing missing.
Mhm.
So if you feel like something's missing, that could be what it is.
Mhm.
And then they should
Absolutely.
come and see you.
Yeah. Yeah, track me down. You can find me at natalienadine.com/yes. And I'll leave the link with the video so people can access it. Do you have a website that people can access?
Yeah, I'm just actually revamping with all these changes recently. So I've been working like a busy
Nice.
bee behind the scenes. So it is theliberatedwomen.com, and the circle will be Soul Sisters Awaken and Unite. So that'll
Oh, very
be
nice.
coming soon. Yes, yes. It'll be Soul
Oh.
Sisters. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's what it really comes down to, is we are sisters. It don't matter where we are, as long as we're women, we're part of the divine feminine. And that's where our power is. And we need to get back to what that looked like. We need to get
Mhm.
back to those missing pieces that we've been separated and condemned for.
Mhm. Yeah. So
So
good.
I thank you so much.
You're most welcome. And thank you for joining me and for sharing your experience and letting everybody know how it felt, and where they can find you, where they can find me, and what to do next. So thank you.
And we share with a whole lot of love.
Oh, all right. Take
Yes.
care. Bye.
Bye.